Hello everybody, welcome to another WeatherCast USA forecast video for April 9th, 2025. First, you can see here, this week has been a fairly quiet week after a few storms in the southeast to close out the weekend. A couple of those were severe, dropping an isolated tornado or two, and also damaging winds and some larger hail in a few storms. We have a trough that is dug into the east, and you can see here there is a reinforcing disturbance here in the Great Lakes, with some scattered rain and even some snow mixed in, especially in Michigan, northern Ohio, and northern Indiana this afternoon and evening. We also do have a bit of an onshore push here in Florida's east coast that will lead to an increase in shower activity, especially on the east coast of the Florida Peninsula. And here's a look at the HRRR model, one of the shorter-term high-resolution models that we can use to see convection in the near term. You can first see this area of the reinforcing shot of cool air with that trough on the east coast. You can also see that flow of moisture into the Florida Peninsula here as we go forward. That's going to increase that shower and thunderstorm activity, especially again on that east coast of Florida. By the time we get into tomorrow afternoon, we look for another disturbance riding around that ridge to increase the chances of shower and thunderstorm activity, especially in the mid-Mississippi Valley and into the Tennessee Valley. This is around 19Z, but we'll put the model into motion and it should pick up here just into the late afternoon and early evening hours. And that activity could be severe, with especially a potential for larger hail and some damaging winds. A tornado or two is not out of the question, but mostly it's going to be a damaging wind and large hail event, as the trough shape is not very conducive for those higher level severe events. And you can see that flow of moisture here with those storms working from the northwest to the southeast across areas like southeast Missouri, southern Illinois and southern Indiana, eastern Arkansas, western Kentucky and Tennessee, and then also northern parts of Mississippi, Alabama, and Georgia. Later tomorrow evening, working even into west central Georgia. On Friday, we even get some shower and thunderstorm activity in northern parts of Florida, as well as the coastal areas of the Carolinas. That could spark some severe weather on Friday afternoon, especially in eastern parts of North Carolina and South Carolina. We also see the low pressure intensifies as it gets into the weekend here for the Northeast. That's going to lead to increased shower activity, especially along that I-95 corridor. And then we look for that cool air to filter in behind this reinforcing shot of that troughing. And that's going to lead to an increase in snow precip, especially in the higher elevations of the Northeast, from Pennsylvania up through the Adirondacks and into the Green and White Mountains. So taking a look at the precip here from the GFS model, this will go out a little further and we'll get some other details about some of those events that are a little further out. Going into tonight, you can see that rain and snow mix in northern parts of Ohio and lower Michigan, as well as spreading into northwest Pennsylvania, maybe western New York, as that first piece of energy, that reinforcing troughing, works its way across the Great Lakes and into the Northeast. You can also see some hints of that next wave. That's the one that's going to drop into the mid-south and cause a little bit of that severe weather tomorrow afternoon. And here around 21Z tomorrow, you can see the storms exploding here in the mid-Mississippi River Valley and working their way to the south and east. You can see that system really deepen as it works its way up the east coast by Saturday. That is going to lead to those increased chances in some snow precip, especially in the Appalachians. Most of the snow should stay away from the I-95 corridor. Things should stay relatively quiet over the weekend, but by Monday we do see another system, kind of a clipper system, working its way across the Great Lakes. That's going to bring another reinforcing shot of cool air into the middle of next week. Also, another possibly heavier band of snow into areas like the Dakotas, into northern Minnesota by Monday and Tuesday. And you can see by the middle of next week, with that reinforcing troughing in the east coast, we have a general pattern that still holds, ridging in the west and then troughing in the east. And that's not a very conducive setup for large-scale severe weather events. Though it does appear that other than the mid-south into the coastal Carolinas by Friday, that this next weekend and much of next week should remain clear of any large-scale severe weather events. And it's pretty far out, but there are hints that by next weekend, we begin to see a pattern shift by Friday or Saturday. So although that's a little far out, it is worth noting, and we will have more updates as we get closer to that time frame. But it is worth noting that there are signs of a pattern shift again to a more agitated weather pattern, then that would increase the likelihood of some larger scale severe weather activity going into the 3rd and 4th week of April. And after April came in so strong, it does appear that we will get a little break this first full week of April, and also likely the 2nd week of April 2025. Next, I want to take a look and see some of the snow totals. The GFS is kind of outdoing it, I think. The Euro model, I think, has a much better sense of some of the snowfall totals. Again, we do have kind of marginal temperatures for a heavy snow event, and I think that's going to be confined to the higher elevations in the Northeast. Let's first take a look here at the Great Lakes for this evening, and especially into Thursday and early Friday for some snowfall totals. So you can see here through the weekend, some of that snow adds a few inches of snow into lower Michigan. Even areas around Detroit or just north of there, around Macomb and Rochester, Michigan, could see an inch or two of snow. But you can see a lot of this is very light, maybe an inch or two of snow. Again, the Euro model has a little bullseye just north of Detroit. That's showing about 4 inches of snow, and that, I think, is a questionable amount too. Just on the top edge of your screen, you can see, especially later this weekend, there could be a reinforcing bit of snow in the northern parts, the Arrowhead of Minnesota. But mostly here in the Great Lakes, we're talking about very light snowfall. It only might be a dusting of snow on some elevated surfaces. Things stay pretty dry on Wednesday here in the Northeast, but we'll watch as we put the model into motion that snowfall develop around the lower peninsula of Michigan, and then we'll see that spreading into western New York, northwest Pennsylvania, and especially those higher elevations of the Alleghenies, the Poconos, into the Adirondacks and the Green and White Mountains. I think the Euro model is pushing a little too much snow towards the I-95 corridor. And as you can see, just like we looked at on the Great Lakes map, a lot of this is very light snow, maybe an inch or two. Again, I think the models are overdoing it a little bit. The Euro model has a little better sense of, I think, where the snowfall is going to be. But again, even in western Massachusetts, we might get 3, 4, maybe a very high amount of 5 inches on some of the highest elevations. The models do kind of show a little bit of a bullseye in northeastern Pennsylvania. Those highest elevations, I think, could see 6 inches of snow, maybe even 7 or 8. And then a little bit also down here in eastern parts of West Virginia, some of those highest elevations could see 6 or 7 inches of snow. And although we might see a flake or two along the I-95 corridor, I think most of that is going to be very light snow. Let's take a look at the height anomalies. This can really show some of that frothing as well as the ridging in the west. But you can see we start here on Wednesday with that trough still kind of dug into the northeast, and just this overall general troughing along the eastern half of the country with some ridging in the west, especially centered around Nevada, Arizona, and California. Putting this into motion, we can see that reinforcing shot of troughing here by Thursday. That system is going to bring the elevated chance of some severe weather from the Mid-South to the Tennessee Valley on Thursday and Thursday evening. So we'll look out for that. Again, large hail, damaging winds are the two primary threats, but there is a small tornado risk, especially in that area in the mid-Mississippi River Valley. We can see that low deepens as it gets off the East Coast, and that's what's going to bring that periphery chance of snow into the Northeast, into the Appalachians, and into higher elevations of Pennsylvania, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Western Mass. And by Monday, we see that next reinforcing shot of troughing here for the East. And by next Wednesday, there's signs that trough has really dug in again to the east. That's going to bring, again, some chances of rain and shower activity, as well as a little bit of snow shower activity, maybe some light accumulations through the middle of next week for the Great Lakes and the Northeast. Again, this is a look at Saturday the 19th. This model does start to show that pattern switch where there's a little bit more broad ridging in the east and broad troughing in the west. And that pattern, especially in springtime, is usually a sign that there's more conducive environment for severe weather events. But again, it's a little too early to tell the details on that, like specific timing or locations. We'll definitely have more on this pattern shift as we get into next week and get closer to the weekend of the 19th and 20th of April. And the break in the severe weather is much needed. As you can see here, the Ohio and Mississippi valleys have a ton of flooding still ongoing. Many of the creeks, rivers, and streams are still above flood stage. Don't drive into flooded low water crossings, and please stay back from the riverbanks as some of those could be unstable, especially with the flood waters rushing by. And that's a look at your WeatherCast USA QuickCast for April 9th, 2025. Don't forget to like and subscribe. We'll bring you more forecast videos and also more live streaming coverage of severe weather events. As the severe weather season ramps up, have multiple ways to get warnings, and like and subscribe for notifications when we go live.